Join the team.
Hey, theMCGuiRE Review, and today we're going to take a look at a newish game. This is from Stonemaier Games. It's called Expeditions. Now, there's a number of videos that are already out there today on this game, most of which, from a review perspective, will give it extremely high marks and reviews. And, you know, before we get into this, I do want to say, because it's becoming increasingly important to folks, I generally have always done this, but I don't do paid content. I would do sponsorships potentially in the future, but it would be something that would be not what I'm actually making the video on. But we don't do paid content here. Some things do come in for review. A lot of things I just purchase and I like to play and review and make videos on. This I did purchase. I was not sent this as a review copy for this game. I purchased this from Miniatures Market, and I got it for a pretty good price from them. And that's another thing that we're going to hit with this game as well. Now, what we're going to do is we will very lightly kind of go through, because it may be the first time you've ever heard of Expeditions or seen a video on Expeditions. So we will very quickly just kind of go through the various things that are included here. You can see on the table. We will talk a little bit about the gameplay and kind of how the game works, but we primarily will focus our conversation here on the things that really, really work for this game and the things that do not. Because really, what it comes down to is, should you buy Expeditions? Is this a game you should buy? For some people, that answer may be yes. For many others, it may be no. Very quickly, we do have our a nice big box here. We got a big box. There could be a lot of reasons for that, and we'll talk about that as we go forward. There are some chits here, which are coins. There are some other little wooden blocks here that you use to put and do from your draw bag to put on your tiles, to vanquish. You're kind of vanquishing away, we'll just say, evil from these, or a problem from these areas, to then be able to gain more benefits on those cards. So every one of these will kind of have a spot where you'll put these little vanquish tokens on it once you explore and you flip over the tile. It'll have one or two, it'll have two different options. One of them is kind of just right available to you, and another one you have to vanquish to be able to use it go forward. You do get it immediately once you vanquish as well. There are some wooden worker meeples that are involved. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colors, and each one of those different types of workers does a different thing in the game. Like green are like engineers, these red are like fighters or warriors, and each of them play a different role. That'll come into play with your cards when you actually place those little wooden meeples onto your cards to be able to activate various different abilities of the cards. Okay, you do have your cards, just your standard full-size cards. You've got these little boards here for each player. Each player does get a absolutely fantastic miniature. We'll go right into those here probably first. You've got your draw bag, I already mentioned that, and that's pretty much all the components that are going to be offered in the game. Now, I do have the base box here as well. It does have a nice plastic insert to kind of cap over everything, so everything's done really well from that perspective. There is a booklet that goes over solo rules as well that's included. We'll talk more about that. There's a nice little achievement sheet. This is always fun, where you can kind of track, whether you're playing it solo or not, you can kind of track your achievements that you've had as you're playing the games. That's always fun if you want to play the game multiple times, many times over the course of years. That always gets fun to track those achievements every time you have a game with family or friends. And then there's a nice insert that you'll see here that will hold the rest of the miniatures. We'll go ahead and get all the miniatures out, because we will have those on camera, and they are in there nice and tight, which, so you want to be a little bit careful when you're getting them out, but I do appreciate how snug they are in there, so they're not just bouncing all over the place. But the miniatures are fantastic in this game, but there's plenty enough space there to store everything in the game nicely. But again, it's a big box, so we're gonna talk about that. Okay, set this to the side. I'm gonna get this and these things kind of out of the way. Actually, let's just go right into play style first, and then we'll swing back around and we'll talk about these miniatures. So this is essentially a resource management game. You could say kind of a worker placement as well, but because you're moving this mech around and you're doing, you're going to various places, and wherever you go, you gain different types of resources or different types of actions. Okay, so that's what this game is at heart. It is a sequel to the very popular game Scythe, and I'm a big fan of Stonemaier Games. I have a number of them. I don't care how many people say Tapestry is broken. I do really like that game. I really like Scythe, and that's the reason why I definitely picked up this game, because it is right into that universe. It is a completely different game, but it does go right along with that Scythe, style and artwork and universe, which I thought was cool. So it being taking some things from the game Scythe with the little stars that go on once you achieve things, and after you've got so many of them, the game does come to an end. You're essentially going to be moving around, and you're going to be placing your mech on various different areas. Those areas you may go to because there's a card you might want that's near it. You may go there because it allows you to draw cards. You may go there because it gets you workers. You may go there because it allows you to gain strength and guile. Those are your two resources primarily in this game. Pretty much everything you do, you'll have to pay for it with strength or guile. So you'll gain that by playing your cards as well. And this game kind of has a concept where anything that's in your hand is on the left side of your mat. It's always face up for everybody. As you play cards, you'll move those cards to the left side, to the right side. Everything's going to be on the left here. You'll move them over to the right side, and it makes it active. And once you move it to the right side, then you'll look at your card, and you'll be able to gain some of the things that are up here. You'll gain a strength, you'll gain a guile. Hey, if you've got stars on the board already, it's generally what you'll see here on these cards. Then you gain even more, right? So the more stars you get out, the more things you're going to gain as you play the game. You're also going to be able to then place your workers on the cards to get a special ability at the bottom of the card. You don't have to do that, but it does give you an extra special ability. Okay, that's essentially what you're going to be doing when it's your turn. You're going to be taking cards from this side, playing them on this side, or you're going to be moving, or you're going to be gathering from whatever this tile allows you to do. The thing that's interesting about this game is this concept right down here on the board. And you'll see it on the overhead cam, where you can take these turns where you refresh, which basically pulls everything back. It pulls all your workers back. It's that mechanic to kind of get everything back in your hand and then allow yourself to kind of build that engine again. That's when you would take that refresh step. It also allows you to do all three of your core actions in a single turn after you've refreshed. So that's the only time that you can move, play, and gather all within a single turn. Otherwise, you're taking this little block and you're kind of moving it around every time it's your turn, and you're only getting two of those three actions. I do like that system. I like the decisions it makes. So now we'll start. I think I've explained enough about gameplay. Again, if you want to see how to play, if you want to see a playthrough, there's plenty of those videos out there. This video is focused on what is this thing in front of us, and really should you buy this game? So I'm gonna get deep into those concepts, because that's really what you need to know to press the buy button. You can watch all the playthroughs you want. You can watch all the how to plays you want. You're really not going to get out of those videos what I'm going to tell you here in this video. So one of the mechanics that I love is the fact that you have to make this decision every time it's your turn of, well, I would love to move, play, and gather, but I'm only going to be able to do two of those things until I do a refresh turn. And you may be nowhere near a refresh turn. So I'm just going to move and I'm going to gather, which would mean every mech can move 1 to 3 spots unless you have a mech power that allows you to move further than that. One of them does, and it's this one right here. This one can move 1 to 4 spots. Every mech has a unique power that will be printed right on your board. We're going to go there in a second, okay? So you would move, and then you would gather, you would take whatever on the tile, okay? So I like that decision every play, and I like how that kind of keeps the turns going around the table generally faster and you don't get into as much analysis paralysis because you just don't have as many actions to be able to execute on. You just have your two. And then you have to strategically think, well, when am I going to execute that refresh stage? Because I don't get to do anything when you refresh. You're just taking everything back and kind of resetting everything. You don't have to do anything. So that needs to be done strategically as well as you're playing the game. So I really like that concept. You will be able to do things over the game where you'll quest and you'll get item upgrades and you'll meld meteorites. So thematically, I just love all of that. That's done really well. And you'll tuck the cards under your board here. And then depending on how many of those things you've done over the course of the game, then you'll get more points as well when you're done with the game and you score the points. So that's another little mechanic I really liked, was this you could call it set collection aspect, where you're trying to like do a certain number of things. It also forces you to move around the board to different tiles, because these quests that you solve can only be solved on specific tiles, and it will tell you that right on a card exactly where you need to go and how much of these resources you need to pay, your core resources of strength and guile, to be able to solve it. And then you kind of solve that issue that's within that spot. I love that gaming mechanic and aspect as well. That's fun if you like that kind of stuff. The third thing that I like from a mechanics perspective is how these cards, when you play them, there are many cards that will play off of other cards. So you may play a card that says, hey, also activate the previous card's ability. I like that, because then it forces you as a player to maybe hang on to certain cards and specifically play them in a certain order, even if that order doesn't always make sense for your strength and your guile. Otherwise, if it didn't have something like that, you'd just be playing random cards like whenever you needed strength or guile, and you would just, okay, I'll play this one now, and I'll play this one. The fact that these cards can kind of chain off of one another, depending on the order that they're put in, is very cool. Because when you gain cards in this game, like if you were to pick up a card from here, then you would replace it. Or if you would draw a card and you would gain a card, whenever you gain cards, they go into your, we'll call your active pile. They don't go into your hand. They're like auto-played. But you don't get the resource benefit. You get to put a worker on it. You don't get any of that. It just goes into your chain of played cards. That's also interesting because you can then strategically think, well, my chain's this long. I have one of these cards that says if I activate it, I get its ability and the previous card. But I don't want that previous card's ability, but I want that previous card's ability. So I'll go ahead and like gain the card, put it in, and then I'll play a card. And now I get the played card's ability and this previous card's ability that I wouldn't have got otherwise. So that's a really well-designed mechanic from a card play perspective. And those are the three things mechanically that I really like with this game that I think work really well. Now we're going to go into the miniatures. The miniatures are fantastic. They are done really well. I like the size. I like the scale. The detail is awesome. This game comes in two versions. It comes in a deluxe version and a standard version. I bought the standard version, and I bought the standard version on purpose. One, the deluxe is too expensive. And two, these plastic miniatures are actually better, in my opinion. They have more detail than the metal ones do. And that's really the only difference. You get metal miniatures in the deluxe edition. And these can be painted. And you don't even have to be a good painter to be able to paint these. These are all pretty much like metallic machines. You could easily just base this, brush, paint whatever color you want, bronze, gold, silver, whatever. Come back with that same color and dab in a few little areas, or maybe a different metallic color and dab in a few areas. Wash it, and you're done. Like, you could make these look absolutely fantastic with very, very little effort, and I will be doing that. I'll probably post some pictures on Instagram once I get these all painted. So, and you can't do that with the metal ones, right? Like, you don't... Well, I mean, technically you could, but I wouldn't recommend that. Like, if you're going to paint them, you definitely want these. And if you're not going to paint them, I still recommend these. They look better. They got higher level of detail and quality. They just look better. Okay? They're just very, very... I'm going to just put these miniatures out here. They're just Really, really cool looking. I love this guy right here. Okay, so that's the miniatures. Where I'll go next from a review perspective is the powers of the miniatures. The powers of the miniatures are completely unbalanced in this game. Again, like I said from the very beginning, I'm a fan of Stonemaier Games. I do like this game. But there are a number of things that are going to get called out in this review that I think should and could have been better. And there's a number of reasons why there's probably a number of people that would not actually buy and pick up this game. Again, should you buy it? So, the powers are not balanced. They're just not. There's some mechs that just allow you to move a little bit further. That's an ongoing effect. But how beneficial is it over the course of the entire game? Not really that beneficial. Most of the time, you're going to be moving 1 to 3 of these tiles. Very rarely would you need that 4th move, and do you use it? Maybe if the thing could move 5 tiles or 6 tiles, that would be more beneficial. But 4, not really doing much over the course of the game. It's very situational. Then you got other mechs, like this guy right here, who can vanquish things much faster, which is hugely beneficial over the course of the entire game once you start to flip this central and this north row. When you start this game, everything down here in the south is already open. It's pretty much your area to like get your workers and start to get some cards and whatnot. Then you start getting into the central part of the board. This part in the middle, they're all gray, and this part at the top is all blue. And those are all hidden in the beginning, and you flip them over and you explore them. That's when you're going to start getting this stuff here that's going to have to be vanquished. And when you have a mech that, if you have 2 tokens here and you stack these up, you always have to have whatever total it tells you on the tile. You stack these up on the tile. It might go over, but you have to have at least that amount. And you got, let's say, these 2, a teal and a orange. Well, the orange, you use strength. It's orange. The teal, you use guile, right? It's teal. And if I was playing this character, this would say, this says 3 and 3. Any other person would have to pay 3 strength, then they would have to pay 3 guile, and then it would be fully vanquished, and they would then immediately gain what's under this, what's this action right here. They immediately gain it for free by vanquishing it, which is a nice little bonus and benefit. If I had this mech, I would only need to do 2 and 2. It's 1 less of each color. Now, if they were both orange, it would be 2 and then 3. But since it's orange and teal, it'd be 2 and 2. That's huge over the course of the game and far outweighs the benefit of just being able to move 1 extra square. That's just an example. I'm going to get a couple of these other ones out here, and I can show you the benefit of each of these mechs, and you can see why this does feel. It doesn't feel it is. It's just not balanced. Like this other one here, you may solve, upgrade, and meld up to 5 times each. Okay, that's huge. When you get into final scoring, you may gain cards directly to your hand. That's huge over the course of the entire game. This one actually well outweighs this one because you can gain cards directly into your hand and not into your played pile, which means you can continue to take actions where you play, especially if you're gaining a bunch of cards. It allows you to not have to refresh as soon as you possibly could, and you can get more cards out into the play area if they're going directly into your hand. Now again, we can still utilize that mechanic I said earlier where you gather a card, but then you have to have the play the card's previous ability, or it adds no value whatsoever going into here, that's the way it's going to work for everybody else. If you're this mech, it goes in your hand, then you can play more. That's huge. This final one here says you may trash a map at any time on your turn to gain strength, guile, or $1. That goes into these little map tokens. It says you acquire these map tokens and explore. You can trash one at any point in time to gain a single strength, guile, or $1. I don't really know. Like, that one's nowhere near as beneficial as like these two. So that's a problem in my mind. And that's going to be a problem for people who want to play this game and want a balanced gameplay. Now, you could make the argument and say, well, if you're really good at this game, take the mech that only moves one more and give somebody else the mech who, could reduce guile and put cards directly into their hands, and they'll have a little bit of a benefit over the course of the game. Okay, you could say that. Games shouldn't be designed that way. So if you want to play this game and you want a fully, perfectly balanced experience, you need to ignore the mech powers, and just, mechs don't have powers. They all just have, they don't have a power. You could just ignore all the powers and play the game that way. I don't know if I would play that way. I think I would always use the powers. I just would make it clear before we played that some of these powers could absolutely be more beneficial and more powerful over the course of gameplay, depending on which mech you're playing. Okay? That's not my opinion. That, you can find that almost everywhere at this point. It's just the way it is. It's the mechs are not balanced in the ability that they provide. Okay, the next thing we're going to go into is the size of everything and the components. It's unnecessary. This game does not need to be this big. It takes a decent size. It's not huge, right? But it could take much smaller table presence, size, but still have big poppy table presence. These are they're twice the size they need to be. These should have been half of the size, and it would have been a much smaller area to put out, keeping the miniatures the same size they are. The miniatures would have popped and would have had this more gigantic feel if it would have been that way as well. I just think it would have been a much better product design. You still would have been able to put your two pieces of information that are on every single tile still on there that way. They may have even still been able to be the same size that they are. But I think what they were going for is showcasing the artwork maybe a little bit more, and I just think it's unnecessary. I think the smaller hexes would have looked better table presence wise. It would have been cheaper to produce because it's less cardboard, and it would have required a much smaller box. So I think all of that should have been miniaturized. I think these little tokens could have been smaller. I think the worker meeples are the right size. Anything smaller there, I don't know if that would have made sense. But these tokens should have been half the size. These should have been half the size. And I think everything would have even looked even better, and it would have popped even more. Imagine that, with all of this stuff shrinking, but then these staying the same size, I think would have had even a more unique product design and appeal visually. That's just my opinion, but that's how I think it should have been designed. I think it would have looked a lot better that way. I also think that it would have made the box much smaller. This box could have been half the size. It's another thing. This is kind of an oddly shaped box. It's not a square. It's a rectangle. It's extremely tall. It's just huge for the game, and I think it could have been half the size if things would have been brought down. It may be something that's, they're making this a bigger box because they got a bunch of expansions planned, and you can fit all the expansions maybe in the box. Okay, that's fine. Still, you could have done the same thing, made everything smaller. The box would have been maybe a little bit bigger. It would have been maybe this big, and you still could have done the same thing. So that was a design decision that I don't really understand, and I think that could have been better. That's from a product review perspective. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to hit is all of these coins, and I might be harping on this one, but I'm going to say this. This entire area of components are completely unnecessary for this game. The only thing that you use these coins for is over the course of the game, there may be times that you gain a coin. One of those mech's abilities was to trash a map token and gain a dollar. So you would gain $1, gain a coin, okay, during the game. There's other things that will happen during the game that will gain you coins, but it isn't a lot. At the end of the game, you might have a stack of 5 or 6 coins if you're lucky. Okay? You primarily use these at the end of the game when you add up all your points and you're like, oh, I got 15 points for this, so give me 15 coins. And I got 10 points for this, so give me 10 more coins. And I got this many here, so give me 6 more coins. Just like any game, at the end, when you add up all your points, you don't have to collect a coin or a little token for that. You could just say, add up all your points. I got 26 points. I got 86 points, 56 points. You don't need to collect and gain all these coins. The coins that you gain during the game are very minimal for the most part. So why wouldn't you just eliminate all of this tokens and all these coins and all this stuff that has to be out here? Give a very small pile of tokens, maybe like this big, that are like, and you can even make a metal to make it cool, like little metal badges, little metal achievement badges, little metal, or little, make them cardboard, make them metal, whatever, but little achievement badges. And over the course of the game, when you do different things, you gain a little achievement badge. And at the end of the game, those achievement badges are worth 3 coins each, 2 coins each. That would have been a much better way. I think, again, component-wise, I think it would have been cooler. I would have loved little metal achievement badges about that big or whatever. And I have other games that actually have done that you gain over the course of the game through various different things. And I don't have to fiddle with like all this coinage that absolutely adds no value whatsoever. And I'll tell you why publishers do this. And I think this game has fallen into this trap. And I feel like if I'm calling you out here, I'm sorry, but when you think about production, this kind of stuff is like when components end up being in a game where they're unnecessary to be there, they're there because, one, it allows some type of addition to the cost of the game. 2, it allows you to create this ecosystem where now down the road you have to buy the metal coin upgrade, which people fall into this FOMO, and then they got to buy something else, which they don't even need to even start with. Or it offers you the ability to turn that thing into something else that is metal to then jack up the price of the game to then give you this deluxe edition, which again adds no value from the gameplay perspective. Wow, I feel like I really harped on that, but it's 2024, and components need to be there that are necessary for the game, and when they're not necessary, get them out of the game. Figure out a different way to do that, and figure out a different way to achieve the product ecosystem that you're after than just that, right? That's just, come on. Okay, enough about that. I feel like I've just angrily gone through these coins, so I apologize for that. But that really just, when I played the game a number of times, and I'm like, why do I have these coins? I could not stop myself from having to kind of call that out. Okay, the other thing that I'm going to hit is the solo version of this game. So let's end this on the players. Another thing I feel this game has fallen into is this trap of trying to be everything from 1 to 5. And it's not. It's a horrible game at 5 players. I'm just going to say that. Don't play this game at 5 players. It takes way too long. The board is overly crowded. And it just doesn't scale well with 5 players. It just doesn't. And I think there's going to be parties that don't mind sitting around the table for hours and hours, don't mind bumping into each other constantly and being all crowded. And there's people that are not going to mind that. They're going to have fun in that competitive head-to-head nature. For the most part, I cannot recommend this game. It is a do not buy if you're looking for a 5-player game. If you are looking for we'll go all the way on the other side of the spectrum now. This game is a fantastic solo game. It is probably one of the best solo games that I've played that's of this style. Now, the other side of that is, me personally, I would never buy this game just to play it solo. Let me tell you why. Because I don't like playing these types of games solo. But people that like playing worker placement and resource management games solo with a automated player setup will absolutely love this game, and I promise you it will be probably one of the best or one of the most fun that you end up having in your collection, because the automated system for the solo part of this game is super simple and fantastically designed. It's very smart. It works really well. With it being as simplistic as it is, I was very impressed with that. I just don't personally like playing solo games where it's like, okay, I got 86. Next time I try to beat that score. Next time I try to beat that score, right? And then very rarely do you ever actually lose to the automated system, unless this game does allow you to crank up the difficulty level of that automated system, and then you will start to lose to it when it gets cranked up. It does get very difficult. You have to get very, very good and very strategic to beat it on its hardest level. So that is really well done. So if you like playing games like this solo, it's a buy. It's a buy for you if you're going to primarily play this game solo and you like these types of games. It's 100%. Okay? That's fantastic. The two-player game. I think the two-player game is good. The reason is the two-player game gives you that solo experience, but you're actually playing with another person. So now I enjoy that. The two-player game, nothing changes. There's this many tiles out no matter what. Okay? But when you have two players and you only have two mechs out there, well, now look, like, you're not really getting in each other's way that much. You can explore, do your thing. You're not really getting in each other's way. You will. Near the end, there'll be some things where you might be getting in each other's way. You might get a little competitive near the end and be like, hey, I know what you're doing, so I'm going to block that spot from you, because you can only put one mech on every tile. You never can have any more than one mech on a tile. You can move through mechs, but one mech on every tile. Okay? Again, that's why you need the big mech. You big tile. Well, you need the big tile if you can put more than one mech on each tile, right? Then it starts to make sense. One mech on each tile. Okay? Two-player game, I do enjoy. I think it's really nice. Where this game's sweet spot is the 3 to 4 player. Some people may feel like the 4 player could go a little long. You will 100% go more than the 90 minutes that is on this box. If you play 5 player, I don't know how long you'll go, okay? But it'll be a long game. 3 to 4 player is that sweet spot. I think gameplay for time of length of game, probably 3 player is the best. It's just 3 players can be a little bit of an odd number sometimes for folks. Like, you generally have 2 or you have 4 or you're soloing. You don't, 3 is always weird. Like, you generally don't have 3 people to play. For me, it works with the family. My kids really love playing. I mean, my wife does as well, but my kids really love playing board games. They play more games with me. So that actually works out for me pretty well. I've got both my kids and myself, and we can play a little 3-player game of this and have a great time. So I think that's where the sweet spot for me is with this particular title. That for me, it's the 2, 3, and 4 player. Again, because I don't play this type of game solo. That's just not something I would do. But if you do, 100% hands down, this is gonna knock it out of the park for you. Okay, very well done there. Okay, team, I think that's where we're going to end it with this. Again, this video was really a dive into should you buy this game. And I wanted to hit the things that really make this game great and make it shine, and the things that don't. And I think there's a number of things that don't shine here. And that may be a reason why you should not buy this game. There's too many games out on the market today. There's too many publishers. I'll be honest. If this was 8 or 10 years ago or 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't be pulling all these cards like I am on this. I'd probably take this stance of you know what? This is great. This is just great, right? It's super fun because there's a lot of things here that are great. I'm not going to get rid of this game. This game is staying in my collection. Let me be clear about that. I like Expeditions. This is a fun game. It's not going anywhere from me. But there may be things here that I've said that may shy you away from wanting to buy this game and spending the money to buy this game. This is not a cheap game. This thing MSRP is for $85. Now I got it in the 60s on from Miniatures Market, but this is an $85 game. The deluxe edition is a $100 game. So that may shy you away from wanting to get this game as well, based on some of the things that either are pros or cons. So you really have to think about that as we're going into 2024. these companies aren't little booths anymore sitting in a corner of some building, right? These are multi-million-dollar operations. The board game is a multi-billion-dollar operation. Like, it's got to be there at this point. You're going to be charging this kind of money. It's got to be hitting on all cylinders. And I do think Stonemaier Games has done a very good job over the years, in my opinion, creating games that have high quality components, that are fun, that like I want to play over and over again. And I would say they've done it here with this one as well. It's fun, high quality components. I want to play this game over and over again, but it's got to be played certain ways, in my opinion. And there are things that just, I think from a components perspective, could have been a lot better. Could have been designed better. It would have been a better product offering. And it could have came in at a lower cost. Okay, so that's what I'll say for Expeditions, a sequel to Scythe, another awesome game. I can't remember if we've covered that on the channel or not. I'm not sure that we have, but we probably will at some point if we haven't, because I love that game, and I'm definitely going to get that out of the box again over the course of 2024, and probably give that a few goes. Because I really enjoy that game as well. With that, team, keep rolling, crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.